Hello, students. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. We here at the campus, we're doing the best we can, and we miss all of you greatly. There's about 50 students here. I get to serve them every day. We've put together a few activities for them. They seem to have had a great spirit here, but do pray for the students that are here. I know it's got to be tough for them in some of their jobs. They has fallen through because of some of the restrictions here in California. So be praying for that. We're in lecture 10, in-laws or outlaws. Okay, this is a great lesson. One day, Lord willing, you're going to get married, and you're going to be marrying not only a person, but you marry a family as well. And so we're going to look at lecture number 10, in-laws or outlaws. There's three crucial principles to begin with, and if they're right there in your notes, if you'd follow along. Number one, you don't just marry a person. You marry a family. Hey, you know what? On August 16, 1980, I didn't just marry Mara Lee. I kind of got her whole family with that as well. And that's a great thing. I praise the Lord for my in-laws. All of them I consider brothers, sisters, and with both my biological parents, my mom and dad in heaven right now, I consider my mom and dad Mara Lee's parents, and they're mine as well. So you don't just marry a person, you marry a family. That's a crucial principle. Number two, postpone all possibilities if parents are not perfectly pleased. See, this is why this is such an important principle in your dating, is because you're going to marry this family. Boy, you don't want to come into that with already there's tension, there's all kinds of problems, they didn't put their blessing on it. I'm telling you, you don't just marry a person, you marry a family. So postpone all possibilities if parents on both sides are not perfectly pleased. And number three, you leave and cleave. You leave. We're going to be talking about that in this lesson today. But I'm telling you something, when you get married, you leave and cleave. And you say, well, Brother Shetler, isn't that opposing what you just said? Now, whoa, whoa, whoa. They still are your family now, or they have become your family. But there is no question in the area of authority. You have now leaved and cleaved, and two have become one, and you have started your own family now as well. I'll kind of show you how this all works together. 8 decisions that have to be made about your in-laws. Number 1, decide to accept them for who they are. I don't think your job is to change your in-laws. I think your job is to accept your in-laws. Now you say, well, Brother Shetler, what if they're lost? I don't think you're going to have an opportunity to witness to them until you accept them, until you love them, until they know that there's a relationship there. So number 1, decide to accept them for who they are. Don't try to change them. Enjoy them. Adapt to them. Be interested in what they are interested in. And I think that's find some common ground, and also maybe it isn't common ground. Maybe it's new ground for you. Get involved and get interested in what your in-laws are interested in. Maybe their sports teams or whatever. I think that's very important. Decide to accept them for who they are. Number 2, take a deep breath. Here we go. Every year I teach this. This is a tough area for a lot of students. Decide to call them mom and dad, if possible. Okay. Now, I'm really glad that I did this. And I'll tell you when I did this. I started to do it just weeks before I married Mara Lee. And yes, the first time I said it, it was uncomfortable. Absolutely. And the second time, though, it was still uncomfortable. It takes a little bit. And it's not only uncomfortable for you, my friend, it's uncomfortable for them. You're not my son. You are not my daughter. Why are you calling me mom or dad? But they need to hear it. They need to get used to it. And you need to as well. And I have to tell you, you will be so glad you did. Notice the 2 points. It's uncomfortable at first. Absolutely. But it's not uncomfortable for me now. I couldn't call Marilee's parents anything but mom and dad now. That's the only way I could. I could never call them by their first name. They're my mom and dad. It was uncomfortable at first. And it's good for you to do this, and it's good for them. It begins to develop that relationship. Do know it'll be tough at first, but once you start doing it, you will go, you know what? That was so good that I did that. And I was challenged to do that by Dr. Shetler, and it's really a help now. Number 3, decide, number 1, to accept them for who they are. Don't try to change them. That's not your job to change your in-laws. Decide to call them mom and dad, and I'd guarantee you, you'll be glad you did. Number 3, decide to never talk bad about your spouse to your family. Okay, what did I just say? I never talked bad about Marilee to my family at all. The only thing my family, my siblings and my mom and dad ever heard about me, about Marilee, was good stuff. Never did I say, yeah, Marilee's not, Marilee doesn't do it. Never. I only, because I'm going to tell you, parents are very protective. And at first, they're going to take your side like crazy. And you never want to build that chasm. And here's the other thing. Maybe your spouse will change in that area or whatever. Now, only thing your family knows is the bad that you told them. Decide to never talk bad about your spouse to your family. Number 4, decide to get away from your parents if possible. Now, that's tough. There will be some exceptions to this point, but I am telling you this, you're not ever going to really start your family and your marriage until you get away from your parents. The first year is especially important. You're going to take your wife and put her in your family. There's going to be a problem between your mom and her. It's just going to happen. And I just want to tell you, girls, if the guy's going to live with your parents, he can never be the spiritual leader of that home until you guys get away. And in Deuteronomy 24, verses 5 through 6, it says in the very first year of marriage, the young men, the Hebrews didn't even go out, the Jews didn't even, the Israelites didn't even go out to fight their first year of marriage. They stayed home with their wife to build that relationship. And I just really want to tell you, decide to get away from your parents if possible. Number 5, decide to honor them by asking for advice. Now, I want to share this with you. At that wedding ceremony, girl walks down the aisle, and dad says, where the pastor says, who giveth this woman to be married to this man? And dad says, trembling, her mother and I. Let me tell you what just happened. They are relinquishing the authority that they have over that child. And the presence of the groom's parents are actually saying the same thing and being at that wedding ceremony. That's the blessing. We believe this is God's will. At that wedding ceremony, when that covenant is made, their authority ends at that point. I truly believe that you are not under your parents' authority after the wedding day. I truly believe that. When that covenant, a new family has been created. However, the Bible says, children, honor your mother and your father. Honor your parents. Does that ever stop? It does not ever stop to honor your parents or your spouse's parents. I think there's a way to honor them, and one of them, my advice. Listen, a couple points. Ask something about their strong areas. So girls, if there's a dish that his mother makes that's really good, get the recipe. It is amazing how that will bring you guys together, how that will bring you and your in-laws together. Hey, maybe your guys, Maybe your father-in-law does really good in an area. Maybe he knows how to fix a car. Maybe he's really good with investments. Maybe he's, has some financial sense, or he's a businessman or whatever. And maybe he's even lost, but he's learned some principles that are probably biblical that have worked in his life. Honor them by asking for advice in areas that they're strong in, that they've done well in. That will mean so much, and that will really build a great bond. I'm telling you, that's a great little point there. Number 6, decide to never talk bad about your spouse's family. All right. Now, going back to number 3, decide to never talk bad about your spouse to your family. But now listen to this one. Decide to never talk bad about your spouse's family. Okay, so maybe your spouse has a black sheep in the family. You pray for them. And maybe your spouse talks bad about her sibling or his sibling. And, he or she's a real mess. But you know what? And they can do that. That's their brother or their sister. You can't. Okay. As long as I live, I'll never forget this. Marilee's family has one black sheep in it, okay? His name's Steve. And Steve hasn't lived the way that he should live. And Steve can get on your nerves. I do love Steve. I really do. I think I have the best relationship with Steve of all the relatives. But I'll never forget one day we left a vacation where Steve had caused some problems and it was kind of hard to leave. Well, for the 45 minutes after we left, all Marilee did was talk bad about Steve. After about 45 minutes, I decided to join in the conversation. Yeah, that's true about Steve. Conversation stopped. Total silence. Marilee looks over at me and she says, well, your family's no better. And I went, whoa, when did we start talking about my family? I thought we were talking about Steve. And I learned something that day. You know what? You can say whatever you want about your family, but don't let your spouse say something about your family. You know what? There is a bond there. And I just want to encourage you, decide never to talk bad about your spouse's family. Causes your spouse to be defensive. And it will. They can talk bad about their family, but you cannot. Whatever you do, well, yeah, but there are some good things about Steve, and, God's given him some talents, and he's got some things that he can do, Let your spouse say whatever they want about their own family, but you got to be careful about that. I'm just helping you today, all right? Number 7, decide to be positive around them and don't tell them everything. You know what? Your family doesn't need to know everything that's going on in your marriage and with your kids. They don't need to know all that. My mom and dad lived in Pensacola when I pastored in Pensacola, Florida. And we had things going on with our kids, and, Marilee and I had our times and our moments. I never said anything to my mom and dad about my kids. There were things going on in our family financially. They don't need to know any of that stuff or whatever. Decide to be positive around them and don't tell them everything. Begin to change your intimacy. In your notes there, change your intimacy. Your closest friend, girls, is no longer your mom. Your closest friend now becomes your husband. Change your intimacy. Change your loyalty. Yeah, some of you are, daddy's girls, or like you're a mama's boy. You know what? You need to change that loyalty, because your loyalty now is to your spouse. Change your intimacy. Change your loyalty. They don't need to hear it. Your parents don't need to hear a lot of things. You stay positive with them. Then number 8, this is always a difficult one, but I want to say this. Decide to never borrow money from them. I think this is a very important thing. Decide never to borrow money from your parents. Dr. Scheller, are there ever exceptions? Okay, there could maybe. But I'm going to tell you, I think there's some problems if you ever do, and I wrote them down. You are in bondage. I know, they're my mom and dad. They love me. They want to do this for me. There's still a connection That is not natural and shouldn't be. There's still a bondage there. And you know what, guys? You borrow money from your in-laws. That's just an unhealthy thing. It taints every time you're together as a family. They have rights in you. They expect things from you. They hold it over you. They may not say it by words, but it's always there. I just want to encourage you, if at all possible, don't borrow money. I know there's going to be exceptions to this one, but I really think you need to think it out and you need to pay it back. If you've already done it, or if you, man, get it taken care of, done in a very short amount of time. I would tell you this, if you ever borrow money, it should probably be less than a year that it's all taken care of. And I don't even want to make that exception. 8 decisions that must be made about in-laws, or they will become outlaws. Decide to accept them for who they are. Decide to call them mom and dad. Decide to never talk bad about your spouse to your family. Decide to get away from your parents. Decide to honor them by asking for advice. Decide to never talk bad about your spouse's family. Decide to be positive around them and don't tell them everything. Decide to never borrow money from them. And I'll tell you, if you do these 8 things, they will never become outlaws. They'll become family. It'll be really good. Hey, just before we close today, I wanted to mention, don't forget, April 1st, you have to hand in your book report, Are We There Yet? A 500-word synopsis of the book. What did you like about the book? What did you learn from the book? 500 words is very small, not a big project there, but it is April 1st. I'll tell you the next lecture, I'll tell you when your test is going to be, your next test. Definitely it'll be on I think we have the basic needs of the husband. We have the in-laws and outlaws. We have one more lecture, and then we'll have our next test. All right, students. I hope you're doing well. I really mean that. Give me any prayer requests that we can pray for you. Thanks.